The first contraction hit while my mother was arguing about scented candles. I wish I were joking. I was 30, 2 weeks pregnant, standing in my parents' kitchen with one hand on the counter, trying to breathe through a pain that wrapped around my back like someone was tightening a belt around my ribs. Mom didn't even look up. She was arranging little lavender candles on a silver tray. No, no, she muttered to herself. Emily hates vanilla. Lavender keeps her relaxed. I closed my eyes. Mom, she sighed. What now, Hannah? Another contraction slammed into me. Harder. I grabbed the edge of the countertop. I think something's wrong. She glanced over for exactly 1 second. You still have weeks left? I know, but it isn't time. How she sounded so certain, I'll never understand. My name is Hannah Mercer. I was 27 years old, 8 months pregnant with my first baby, and living with my parents temporarily after my husband, Daniel, had been sent to Germany for a 6-week engineering project. Our new house wasn't ready yet. The builder kept delaying the closing date. My parents had insisted, stay here. We have plenty of room. It'll be easier if you go into labor early. Looking back, that's probably the biggest lie they ever told me. The truth was, everything in that house revolved around my younger sister, Emily, 24, beautiful, delicate. According to Mom, she was also recovering from a difficult breakup. According to Mom, she needed peace. According to Mom, she needed quiet. According to Mom, apparently a woman carrying her first child didn't. Another contraction bent me forward. This one stole my breath. Dad finally looked away from the television. You okay? Before I could answer, Mom did. She's being dramatic. I stared at her. What? You've been reading too many pregnancy forums. Dad nodded absent-mindedly. First babies take forever. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling Daniel. Mom reached over and took it out of my hand. No, I blinked. What are you doing? He's overseas. So, he can't do anything. Give me my phone. She slipped it into her sweater pocket. You'll only upset him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Then Emily walked downstairs wearing silk pajamas. She rubbed her temples dramatically. Seriously. Mom hurried toward her. What's wrong, sweetheart? I was finally falling asleep. She looked directly at me. Do you have to make so much noise? I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I genuinely thought she was kidding. She wasn't. I'm in labor, she shrugged. So, another contraction hit. I doubled over. Emily rolled her eyes. Oh my God. Then she looked at Mom. Can you please do something? Mom nodded immediately. I will. She turned toward me. Hannah? What? Come with me. She led me down the hallway toward the laundry room. I frowned. What are we doing? Just until you calm down. I don't need to calm down. You'll wake Emily. I stopped walking. Mom, she opened the laundry room door. Small room, no windows. Just a washing machine, dryer, shelves, and a utility sink. I stared at her. No, it's only for a little while. I'm having contractions. They'll stop. No, they won't. She gently pushed me inside. I stumbled. Mom. Then she closed the door. I heard the lock click. For 1 second I couldn't process it. I grabbed the doorknob. Pulled. Nothing. No answer. I banged on the door. Mom! Finally, her voice came through the wood. Stop screaming like a pig. I froze. Then she added the sentence that still visits me in nightmares. Emily deserves one peaceful night. Another contraction tore through my body. This one dropped me to my knees. I reached into my pocket for my phone. Empty. Mom still had it. I started pounding on the door. Dad! Nothing. Please, nothing. Minutes passed. Then another contraction. Then another. I lost all sense of time. I begged, I cried. I screamed until my throat felt raw. Nobody opened the door. Hours later, I heard rain outside. Then thunder. Then silence. And finally, a loud knock echoed through the front door. Not mine. The front door. Someone had arrived. I heard Dad answer. Then a man's voice. Calm. Professional. Good evening. I'm looking for Hannah Mercer. My heart leaped. Daniel? No. The voice was older. Someone else. Dad hesitated. There must be some mistake. The man spoke again. No mistake. Then came a sentence that made every sound inside the house disappear. I'm her obstetrician. And suddenly, my parents' faces went completely white. I stopped pounding on the laundry room door. Not because I'd given up. Because I recognized the voice. Dr. Michael Foster. the obstetrician who had cared for me since I was 12 weeks pregnant. 3 days earlier he'd warned me, "If you have contractions closer than 5 minutes apart, I don't care what time it is, you come to the hospital." I'd promised him I would. Instead, I was locked inside a laundry room. I heard Dad clear his throat. "Doctor, what are you doing here?" Dr. Foster answered calmly. Hannah missed 3 emergency calls from my office. My stomach tightened. Emergency calls. Then I remembered. During my appointment that morning, they'd drawn extra blood because my blood pressure had suddenly spiked. The nurse had looked worried. She'd said the doctor might call later. Mom still had my phone. Dr. Foster continued, "When we couldn't reach her, we contacted her husband, Daniel." Tears filled my eyes. Daniel, even from Germany. He'd noticed before my own parents had. Dad hesitated. "She's sleeping." The doctor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, "May I see her?" Mom spoke before Dad could. "She's exhausted." "I'm sure. I'd rather not wake her." Silence. Then another voice. A woman, Nurse Collins. She spoke firmly. "Doctor." I heard papers rustling. Foster's voice changed, not louder, sharper. "Mrs. Mercer, your daughter has severe preeclampsia." My heart dropped. "We've been trying to reach her for hours." Another contraction hit so violently I cried out. This time, the entire house heard it. Silence. Then Emily shouted from upstairs, "Oh my God!" "Is she still doing that?" Dr. Foster didn't say anything. I heard footsteps. Fast, toward the hallway. Mom panicked. "No," Dad whispered. "Linda." She grabbed the doctor's arm. "She's emotional." Another scream escaped me, not on purpose. I couldn't help it. The pain was unbearable now. Dr. Foster spoke one sentence, very quietly. "Unlock that door." Mom laughed nervously. "It's just the laundry room." The doctor repeated himself, slower this time. "Unlock the door." Nobody moved. Then Nurse Collins said, "I'll call 911. Mom finally cracked. "Fine!" She rushed down the hallway. Keys jingled. The lock turned. The door opened. Light flooded in. I was lying on the cold concrete floor, curled beside the washing machine, sweating, shaking, barely conscious. Dr. Foster's face lost all color. He dropped to his knees beside me. "Hannah." I looked at him. I tried. He grabbed my wrist, checked my pulse, looked at my swollen hands, then at my face. His expression became one I'd never seen before. Fear. Real fear. "When was her first contraction?" Nobody answered. He looked at my parents. "When?" Dad whispered. "This afternoon." Dr. Foster stared at him. "It's after midnight." The room went silent. Nurse Collins looked at her watch. Approximately 8 hours. 8 hours. 8 hours. I'd been locked in there for 8 hours. The doctor slowly stood. He looked at my parents. Then he said something that made even Emily stop talking. "If either of them dies tonight." He looked directly at Mom. "I'll personally make sure every investigator knows exactly why." Mom started crying. "I didn't know." "No," Dr. Foster nodded. "You chose not to know." The ambulance arrived less than 4 minutes later. Paramedics rushed inside. One of them checked my blood pressure. His face immediately changed. 196/120. The other paramedic looked at Dr. Foster. "Magnesium now." They loaded me onto a stretcher. As they wheeled me toward the front door, I reached weakly toward Dad. Not because I forgave him. Because I still wanted my father. He reached back, then stopped, ashamed, unable to touch me. Outside, rain poured. The ambulance doors closed. Sirens screamed. And just before they pulled away, Dr. Foster climbed into the ambulance, looked directly at me, then quietly said words that made my blood run cold. "Hannah, we're no longer trying to keep you pregnant." I stared at him. "What?" He squeezed my hand. "We're trying to save your life." And for the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about my son. Because suddenly, I wasn't sure either of us was going to make it. People always ask me what I remember most about that night. The ambulance, the sirens, the emergency surgery. No, I remember Dr. Foster taking my hand. He leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "Hannah, listen to me." I nodded weakly. "I need you to stay awake." "My baby." His eyes softened. "We're doing everything we can." That wasn't the answer I wanted. The 20-minute drive to the hospital felt like 20 seconds. Or 20 hours. Time didn't make sense anymore. Every bump in the road sent pain through my body. A paramedic kept repeating my name. Hannah, stay with me. Another placed an oxygen mask over my face. I could hear numbers being shouted, pressures climbing. Protein results confirmed. Call labor and delivery. Everything blurred. When the ambulance doors flew open, a team of doctors was already waiting. Someone grabbed my stretcher. Someone else started asking questions. When did contractions begin? Dr. Foster answered. Approximately 8 hours ago. Every nurse in the hallway looked shocked. One whispered, 8 hours. Another quietly muttered, my God. They rushed me into an operating room. Bright lights, cold air, blue gowns. Someone squeezed my shoulder. Hannah, we're putting you under. I caught Dr. Foster's sleeve. My son. He smiled gently. His heartbeat is still there. Still there. Those were the last words I heard before everything went dark. When I woke up, everything was quiet. Too quiet. No pain. No contractions. Just the steady beep of machines. I opened my eyes. Daniel was sitting beside my bed. I thought I was dreaming. He was supposed to be in Germany. He looked exhausted. His beard had grown in. His clothes were wrinkled. The moment he saw my eyes open, he burst into tears. Hannah, I smiled weakly. You came. He laughed through tears. I caught the first flight. He kissed my forehead. I thought I was too late. What about? I couldn't finish. The baby. He nodded immediately. Our son is alive. The breath I didn't know I'd been holding finally escaped. He came early. Very early. But he's fighting. I started crying. So am I. Daniel held my hand. Then I noticed something. His wedding ring was gone. I frowned. Your ring. He smiled sadly. Sold it. What? So I could get home faster. I stared at him. You sold your wedding ring? The airline had one seat left. He shrugged. It was an easy decision. I couldn't stop crying. Then Dr. Foster walked in. He looked tired, but relieved. Good morning. I smiled. Did we make it? He nodded. You both did. Then his expression changed. There are a few things we need to discuss. Daniel squeezed my hand tighter. Dr. Foster pulled up a chair. Hannah, the surgery was successful, but there it was, the word every patient fears. But, because treatment was delayed, he paused. Your uterus ruptured. The room went silent. I already knew what he was going to say. You won't be able to carry another pregnancy? Daniel lowered his head. I closed my eyes, not because I wanted another child immediately, because someone had taken that choice away from me. Not fate, not illness, people, my own parents. Dr. Foster quietly continued. If you'd arrived when your contractions began. He couldn't finish. He didn't need to. We all understood. Daniel suddenly stood up. I need some air. He walked into the hallway. The door didn't close completely. Through the small opening, I heard voices. Mom, Dad, they'd come. Mom was crying. We just want to see her? Daniel's voice was calm, calmer than I'd ever heard it. No. Dad whispered, please. You locked my wife in a laundry room. Silence. You ignored a medical emergency. More silence. You almost buried my son before he was born. Nobody answered. Then Daniel quietly said something that made the hallway completely silent. I spent 11 hours on 3 airplanes praying I'd get to say goodbye to my wife. His voice cracked. And the whole time, she was begging her own parents to unlock a door. Even the nurses stopped walking. Nobody spoke. Then Dr. Foster stepped into the hallway. He looked directly at my parents. I've already completed my medical report. Mom stopped crying. What report? The one explaining why my patient arrived 8 hours after the onset of severe labor, despite multiple emergency contact attempts. Dad's face turned white. Doctor, Foster folded his arms. And because I'm a mandatory reporter, he paused. I had no choice but to notify the hospital's patient safety office. Mom grabbed Dad's arm. What does that mean? Dr. Foster answered quietly. It means someone will be asking difficult questions. Their faces drained of color. But none of us knew. The person who would ask those questions wasn't from the hospital. It was someone who had just walked through the front entrance, carrying a leather briefcase. And when the nurse whispered that visitor's name, every doctor in the hallway suddenly stood up. The hallway fell completely silent. Every nurse stopped walking. Even the monitors seemed louder. I looked toward the doorway just as a woman in a charcoal, gray suit walked in carrying a leather briefcase. She wasn't a police officer, She wasn't hospital security. She looked ordinary, professional, calm. The charge nurse walked over to her. The woman quietly showed an identification badge. The nurse's expression changed immediately. She nodded respectfully, then hurried toward Dr. Foster. He glanced at the badge. His face became serious. He walked into my room. "Hannah." I looked at him. "The hospital's patient safety office has sent an investigator." I frowned. "An investigator?" He nodded. "Because your medical delay involved possible interference with emergency treatment." Outside, I heard my mother's voice shaking. "We didn't hurt her." The investigator looked directly at her. "No one has accused you of anything yet." Her calmness was somehow scarier than shouting. "My name is Karen Mitchell." She opened her notebook. "I simply need everyone to explain what happened." Dad immediately spoke. "It was all my fault." Mom looked at him. "Thomas?" "No." He wiped his face. "I'm done hiding behind excuses." He looked at Karen. "I let it happen." Mom burst into tears. I locked the door. Dad nodded slowly. But I stood there. He looked toward my hospital room. I heard my daughter begging. His voice cracked. "And I did nothing?" Karen wrote quietly. She didn't interrupt, didn't argue. She simply listened. Then she asked, "Why?" The hallway went silent. Dad answered honestly, "Because I chose the wrong child." Mom covered her mouth. He continued, "My younger daughter had a difficult breakup. I convinced myself Hannah was stronger. I kept telling myself she could wait." He looked completely broken. "But babies don't wait. Neither does labor." Karen closed her notebook. "Thank you for your honesty." Then she looked at both of them. "I hope you understand that honesty doesn't erase consequences." They both nodded. "I know." Back inside my room, Daniel sat beside me, gently rocking the tiny bassinet the ICU nurses had wheeled in for a brief visit. Our son looked impossibly small, just over 4 pounds, his fingers wrapped around the tip of mine. Daniel laughed through his tears. "He already has your stubborn grip." I smiled. "I hope that's all he gets from me." "No." Daniel shook his head. "I hope he gets your heart." 3 days later, I was finally strong enough to leave the hospital. Mom and Dad were waiting outside, not blocking the exit, not demanding forgiveness, just standing there. Dad stepped forward, then stopped. "I know I don't deserve this." He swallowed hard. "But I need you to know something." I waited. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small house key. "Our house." I frowned. "What about it?" He placed the key in my hand. "We're selling it." Mom nodded through tears. "We don't deserve to keep the place where we failed you." I looked at the key, then back at them. Dad continued, "The money isn't ours. It never should have been. We're creating a trust. For your son." I stared. "What?" "So he'll never have to wonder if someone else matters more." Daniel looked at me. Neither of us expected that. Then Emily slowly walked forward. She looked nothing like the woman from that night. No makeup, no expensive clothes, just tired eyes. She couldn't even look at me. "I've started therapy." I nodded. She continued. "The first thing my therapist asked me," she smiled sadly, "was why I believed everyone had to shrink so I could feel okay." Tears rolled down her face. I didn't have an answer. She looked at my son sleeping peacefully. "I want to become someone he can be proud to call Aunt Emily." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Finally, I looked at my parents. "I can't pretend those 8 hours didn't happen." Dad nodded. "I know. I may never understand how you could ignore me. I know. But carrying this anger forever," I looked down at my son, "would only teach him that pain is an inheritance." Daniel squeezed my hand, so I took a slow breath. "I'm willing to try. Not forget, not erase. Try." 1 year later, we celebrated my son's first birthday, not in my parents' house, not in ours. At a small lakeside park, Grandma June, Daniel's mother, brought cupcakes that leaned sideways because she insisted frosting had more personality. That way, Dr. Foster stopped by after finishing his hospital shift. He smiled when he saw my little boy chasing ducks with determined little steps. I wasn't sure I'd ever get to see this. Neither was I. Before leaving, he bent down beside my son, then looked at me. "You know," he smiled warmly, "people keep thanking doctors for saving lives." He glanced toward Daniel, then toward me. "But sometimes—" He looked at our little boy laughing in the grass. The strongest medicine is simply having one person who refuses to give up on you. I looked around, at Daniel, at my son, even at my parents, quietly helping clean up without asking for attention. Life wasn't perfect. Some scars never disappear, but they don't have to decide the ending. Because families aren't measured by the worst thing they've ever done. They're measured by what they choose to become afterward. And every year on my son's birthday, we celebrate two things: the day he was born, and the day we finally learned that love is never proven by choosing one child over another. It's proven by refusing to abandon any of them.